All right. Good evening, everyone. I am having a very wet week. I don't know about you, PJ, but it feels like it has been raining nonstop here in Lancaster.
We
Where are
actually
you?
just came out of a drought, so we actually got rain for the first time today in like forever.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Now, where are you at?
So I'm in the UK,
Okay, where in the UK?
so just north of London. According to Ryanair, I'm in central London because I live near Stansted. We're based near Stansted
You
Airport.
don't have a very thick accent. I was kind of
I don't,
expecting something
I
super thick.
don't,
You
I
sound more
don't.
like a
I put on this fake English accent so I can be like, we're all going down the pub, have a pint, it's all good.
Feel free to
But
do
it
that
does
tonight.
sound so incredibly fake. And so, from having studied many years in the States, I wake up and my English is with an American accent. Although there are words and all kinds of like variations that happen that I just have no control over. So it just sounds a bit odd at times.
It feels like probably half of the US at this point has had like monsoon season, like tons of we had flash flooding just the other day. I think we're supposed to have flash flooding Friday. It's just insane. Like all the people in Texas and New Mexico and
Yeah, no,
all over the place. Like my heart goes out to them, but maybe
absolutely.
we
Heart
should
goes out
send
to all
some
of
of
them.
our rain your way.
Goodwill and best wishes. Absolutely.
Yeah. But I know we kind of like jumped right in. I didn't really get to fully introduce you, but guys, this is PJ from Dodo Juice. And
Hello.
Dodo Juice is a UK based company. And honestly, I've heard of you guys over the years. I know years ago you were sold over at Auto Geek, and I never actually got to put my hands on any of your products. You did send me out a few samples to kind of work with. It's a little hard to get your products though here in the US. So tonight hopefully we're going to maybe get some attention and get maybe a little bit of interest into people
Sure.
trying or buying your
And we have some
products.
opportunities now for resellers to come on board in the US. So we're happy to kind of field some emails.
Well, that's awesome. And then hopefully if you guys have any questions, you can put your questions in the comment section and we're going to get to them later on in the show. But uh why don't we just dive right on in? PJ, if you don't mind sharing with me a little bit about Dodo Juice, how they got their start.
It's an interesting story. 2007, we came on the scene. I had a landlord who is now my business partner, Dom Kolbeck, and he was at home making something in the kitchen, in saucepans in the kitchen in his house, and I had come over and he was cooking and it smelled all right. So I said, "Oh, what are we cooking up?" And he says, "Oh, I'm making some car wax." I said, "Oh, okay, that's interesting." And then I helped him pour some, and I took some with me, and he said, "Have a go with it, see what you think of it." And I went away, tried it on my car, and thought it
That's a
was
little
fun.
little
It was
risky trying
it
see
was
if it
it
doesn't
was
burn the paint off.
it was fine. It was brilliant. So we actually still have one of the original jars that he did in his kitchen in 2007. So, and this wax, tried it on, buffed it off. It was fine, did the job. It was pretty fun. And he from there kind of said, "Look, I'm looking to kind of do a bit of a side hustle and see if there's something in making car care products." So I was like, "Okay, well, let's see what we can do." And he had the ideas in the beginning for, what he wanted to kind of build and what he wanted to see if we could develop either by ourselves or with help. And he needed somebody to come up with the logo and the creative and that side. And that's where I kind of fit in. And there was a lot of up and down in the beginning, and it was all very much kind of after work. We both had full-time jobs. And in 2007, we had basically developed about four different waxes, but had already made our first innovation, which was, as far as we know, no one had ever released a color charged wax before we had in 2007. And color charging is not some magic or special recipe. It's literally the physics of how the human eye interprets light that reflects off of any surface. So when you increase the density or the opaqueness or the dye or the color of any layer above, it becomes a filter, and that changes the refraction, which causes your eye to see it in a different manner. And this was simply something that we incorporated into our first waxes. We had a shampoo and we had a basic compound, and that's where we started. And in 2007, in a phone call, I think it might have been at like 11 o'clock at night, I was actually in Norway and he was here in the UK. And it was like, should we just pack in our day jobs and go for this? Or do we kind of roll with it as a side hustle for another 2 or 3 years and then see if it fizzles out or if it becomes something? And I think both of us at that time were a bit tired of what we were doing. So we packed it all in. I came back to England and then we started up Dodo Juice. And the idea was to try to hand make custom or our own formulas of car care products that would be at least as good as anything that you could buy on the market at the time when we came out in 2007, but at a non-overinflated price. Because at the time when we came into the market, there were a couple of very big players, and they were having a bit of fun with how they described what was in their waxes and what their waxes could do performance wise. And the marketing became quite, it excelled a lot. And they had quite extreme prices for some of their products. As far as I'm aware, one of those companies had what has to be probably even to this day the most expensive single wax that supposedly was sold. And because of that, we just wanted to get out there and we wanted to make something that people were going to be able to use and buy at a reasonable rate that was actually handmade for them, the same way that those competitors were making their products at a fair price that would get them really good results. And through that process, we picked up 3 chemists and we started. And that was basically the beginning of Dodo Juice. You know, the hope and the dream of, you know, if we put this together, then, and we hold true to what we want to develop and to give out from our brand name, then it will work out.
Well, what all goes into making a wax by hand? I know, I've worked with Vonix products. They're really big with carnauba waxes. They have like palm tree farms and things like that. But like, how do you actually make a wax?
So, I mean, it's literally just a melting process. So, in very simple forms, you take well, I can actually say, about I think in 2012 we released what is called the homebrew kit, which is literally a small tin, and it comes with a glass jar that has all the dry ingredients that you need to create a wax. So that's part candelilla wax, part beeswax, part carnauba wax. It also comes with a small 250 ml bottle, which is the oils and the liquids that are required in order to make the wax spreadable. So
Mm.
one of the great kind of plays in the marketing world when it comes to waxes was this idea that we were trying to reach 100% carnauba in our waxes. And what's interesting about that is that the marketing for what carnauba is absolutely true. It's more about how we tried to or strived to get to a formula that would allow us to have 100% carnauba wax, because at 100% carnauba wax you actually have a product or a substance, a material, which is as hard as concrete. So it is of no spreadable use. You can't do anything with it. It's dry, it's brittle, it will break easily, but it is as hard as concrete. And so it's of no use. The oils and the solvents that you put in with the wax are what maintain the wax in a semi-cured form, so that when you put the wax on your car in a semi-cured form, it allows it to adhere and to cure to the surface of your clear coat, and therefore allow you to buff off the excess and leave some kind of protection behind. So that's the nature of it, is literally you take the dry and you mix in the oils and the solvents, you heat it up, and then there is some process of crystallization and then falling back and then recrystallization in order to get smoother textures. So there's things you can do there that kind of go beyond that. And then you can have a machine that simply kind of spits it out, or you hand pour it. So literally it comes out, you have heated jugs, and you simply hand pour each of the waxes so that you get the finish that you want on the waxes.
Now,
So that's the hand making part.
and I know we're a little bit jumping ahead because I think we're gonna get into a little bit
Yes.
later a deeper dive on waxes, the benefits, the disadvantages, and then talking about ceramic coatings. And so maybe I'm just gonna sideline the questions that I have right now, and we're gonna totally get to that because I have a lot of questions that I want to kind of go off of that. Talking about the chemical resistance of waxes and water spotting issues, and then different features and benefits, and even talking a little bit about color waxes and things like that, and why they're not as popular as maybe they were, years ago. So those are definitely things that I want to kind of get into. But when it comes to, I know we were talking about your waxes and how they're made, but I know you guys have more than just waxes.
Yeah.
So
So
what
the
are some of
dream
the
was
other
always,
products that you guys sell?
yeah, the dream was always that we would make Dodo Juice a full detailing brand. So we would include products and, where we can, alternatives to every stage of a full detailing process. So we have the detailing machines, we have the orbitals, we have pads, we have shampoos, we have pre-washes, we have snow foams, we have compounds up to a medium cut, and we have sealants in both the older variety of polymer sealant technology, moving all the way up to nano sealant technology, all of it in a single range. And we have a lot of what we think are quite innovative products. And so right there on the screen, the red one that you have right there, that's actually red mist, which is actually an old polymer formula sealant. Now, it seems like that is going to be kind of old hat and it's not going to hold up against the newer stuff that's in the market. But the reason that that's still part of our brand and our range is because it offers something quite unique in the ability to be sprayed on, buffed immediately. Because it is solvent based, it allows you to buff it very quickly, and it will put on a thicker than a ceramic layer of sealant. Now, it is a polymer sealant, so it won't last as long as a ceramic. That's the age of that sealant technology. But because it's thicker, it actually is doing a better job of replicating what a wax would do. And because it's thicker, it has gained more of the properties that we're going to come on to later that you can benefit from having a wax over something like a ceramic.
Very cool.
Other innovations are things like we have the Tarmalade, which is a 30 mil pot of a tar remover that comes as a marmalade paste almost. And you might ask, why in the world would anybody do this? But if you have gotten some tar spots on a car and you don't want to just kind of hose down the bottom third of the sides of your vehicle for just some tar spots, you can actually just apply a little bit with your finger just over the tar spot, and so it will have minimal effect on the rest of whatever coating you have on your car.
I'm trying to find that Tarmalade. Is that on this site here?
It will be. If you, it might be easier to just search it at the top with Tarmalade.
All right, I'll do that
But
because that sounds
so yeah,
interesting.
I mean, one of the things that you and I talked about briefly right before we came on is this idea of kind of foaming. And one of the things that I mentioned to you is that we do have two different types of snow foam. And with one of our other sister brands, we have a third type even. So we understand the process of making and developing a snow foam, but
Hmm.
they're not very often used in conjunction with each other. It's more of a question of which one is going to suit the job that you want to do now. And so the pH neutral normal snow foam, which is the Apple iPhone in our range, that
Okay.
is pH neutral. It's going to just give you the most insane lather of foam, the kind of shaving cream effect on your car. And while it's hanging on there and while it's moving, it is helping to lubricate and to loosen any of the dirt that is on your car. Now, it isn't going to get rid of grime, it's going to get rid of dirt. And then, of course, as we all know, the pressure washer that comes immediately behind the snow foam to rinse it off is going to do a lot of the work. So, in that process, you're getting a solution which is offering that silkiness and that cleaning ability to help loosen and to lubricate the dirt so that when you do hose it off afterwards, it comes off easier. In contrast to that, we have iPhone Max, which is our snow foam, which has a TFR in it. So if you are not going to TFR your car and you have a coating on your car, you've got some road dust on it, you just want to give it a spruce up, then you can, in many cases, if it is a reasonably well maintained vehicle, you can actually just give it a snow foam and a rinse, and then you can top up if you need to with any kind of a sealant or spray on top of that. But it's the fast maintenance regime. If you want more effective cleaning from every stage, we add the TFR to the snow foam in iPhone Max in order to give it a little bit more bite. So that citrus bite is going to go in there and it's going to help to break down the proteins and the grime, as well as loosening the dirt and making everything possible to rinse off easily with a pressure washer afterwards.
Okay. So
So it's that difference.
what would you say? I know that there's probably many people in the comments section, and if you guys have used Dodo Juice and there are certain products that you guys enjoy, put those products in the comment section so that other people can see your recommendations. But for those that maybe have not heard of them, have not used them, just because they're not widely available here in the US, what are
Yes.
some of the best sellers that you would recommend that they look into, and maybe some
I
of your
mean,
most underrated products?
I don't actually think they're underrated because they are rated very highly here. But like you said, due to the fact that we aren't as widespread in the United States as we could be,
Hmm.
it's not as well known there. And also the the kind of awarding and magazines and marketing are different in the UK than they are in the US, and not often do people partake in the other one, so to speak. So, but things like our Born to Be Mild shampoo, which is an 800-to-1 pH neutral shampoo, which was actually developed at the end of 2007, released in 2008, is to this day still winning best shampoo in several magazine tests and
Wow.
tests in the detailing industry here in the UK and in Europe. So, that's a formula which, you know, from its get-go was really good, but then also we haven't changed it. We haven't allowed time or the pressures of increased costs or whatever to modify the formula that we know works that well. So Born to Be Mild is definitely one that I would recommend. Any of our waxes I could easily recommend. The other things that really stand out for me, I think are the products that make a difference to the process. So our Crudzilla, for example, which is our TFR, and I know that was something that you wanted to talk about as well, which is this idea that here in Europe we do a lot more of the pre-washing,
Hmm.
preparing to get into the wash. And the atmosphere and the environment over here is that the use of, you know, a product that has some serious bite that can really break up not only the dirt but also grime without actually even getting in contact with the paint. That kind of stuff has a really big market appeal over here, and for very good reason, because obviously the less contact that you can make, the less the chance that you are going to incur any kind of marring or any kind of hologramming or anything like that, right? The
Mhm.
less contact you have, the better, even if you're not going to be making any mistakes when you do have contact with the car. So by that process, but also because of the fact that a lot of the detailers or people who are interested in detailing, and I think that's another thing which is quite different in many respects between the US and Europe, is that I find there's probably a different percentage, a higher percentage of those who are enthusiastically cleaning their cars but are not actual detailers. And there are detailers versus the percentages that you have in the US. So, if you when you go to a lot of US shows, the cars are clean, but I think less of the vehicles in percentage wise, but it's also proportional because a car show in the US is a car show is in the US and not a car show in England. So it's going to be bigger, but in proportion it feels like there is not the higher engagement in being enthusiastically cleaning your own car. And those are not detailers, but that market here in Europe is very much made, you know, more popular by the fact that they want to be able to get the job done as quickly as possible and with the least amount of actual physical contact that has to happen with their paint, because most of them are not detailers and don't always have the skill set to
Mm.
repair if something were to go wrong with a car that they probably have had somebody professional detail first,
Well, I
if
know
that
that
makes.
I feel like this is kind of the perfect time to segue into like my next question because, we talked a little bit behind the stage, some of the differences, some of the similarities, and I've talked with several different international brands, and I feel like there is I don't want to say a big difference, but there's a big enough of a difference between detailing here in the US versus, and I don't want to say just UK, I feel like internationally
Yeah,
that there are different products, different techniques, and different approaches to detailing. And so, like I know for here in the U.S., I feel like there's become a big presence lately with the 3pH systems. People are wanting to do multi-step washes. As far as the hardcore enthusiasts, detailers. Now, if you're talking just the average Joe, yeah, we've got our automatic car washes, and you've got people who are still just throwing a little bit of soap in a bucket, grabbing whatever chamois they have, going to town. There's like a huge divide,
yeah,
in education as far as here in the US. And I think YouTube is starting to help shift that over a little bit. Um, and you said something when we were chatting behind stage that I thought was actually pretty interesting. You were talking about how a lot of the uh, drive, the education for detailing has gone down with the decrease of forums. And I thought that
yeah.
was an interesting point because, like, when I first started detailing, forums were it. We didn't have YouTube.
No,
You
that's
wanted
it.
to learn about detailing, you had to read about it, or you had to
And
go
you
to
read
car shows and
pages and pages and
yeah.
pages and
I
pages. You
read so many
dedicated
forums.
hours of just reading and writing replies.
Thank
And it
God
is,
for AutoGeek and their forums or Autotopia or,
yeah,
all those places. If I saw Mike Phillips' name, I knew it was gonna be good stuff. There were certain people that you just gravitated towards when it
Mike
came to
still loves to
education.
write. Mike
Yeah.
still loves to write, and he will never change. I'm very good
No.
friends with
And I
Mike,
mean, there
and
are
I
certain
know that
things that
he will
after the fact,
never,
I'm like,
ever, ever change. He does. He will literally go down and detail his own car, and then walk up into his house, get on his laptop, and write himself a detailing report. That
yeah.
is how much he loves to write a report on detailing. And
And it,
yeah,
it
and he taught everybody, didn't he? I mean, we
yeah.
all learned from Mike. Let's be honest. Even the companies that he worked for learned from Mike.
Yeah.
So it's incredible. What a legend.
Yeah. The fact that he's still doing it to this day and can run circles around half of us is insane. But I do think honestly, like when you said that, I was like, we should bring back the forums. We should bring
It's
back, and I know
difficult
that there
though.
are some people within like Facebook groups, and we could say that Facebook is in a way like a forum, but even there are certain people that like to write exposés, like essays. And
Yeah.
sometimes they can be a little excessive. Maybe we should keep it to like, 5 paragraph summary or something. but but
But you decide. That's the other thing is that on a forum you decide. You ran up into one of Kelly Harris's posts from the UK on Detailing World, and you knew that you were in for a Silmarillion Tolkien event where 30% of what he said you didn't understand, 60% you had to look up, and 30% you had remembered somebody else mentioning before. And it was just crazy, but there was so much packed into it. Mike is the same way. You every time you delved in, every time you actually gave it that little bit of extra time that you probably wouldn't have normally done, you always gained something from it. And I think that has a lot to do with just the general attention span differences that we have, but even just 10 years ago, between now and 10 years ago,
well, and I think a lot of
the-
that is social
people want to
media.
know in 10 seconds or less,
We
or
want instant gratification, and I that is some of the advantages to having technology and the internet at your fingertips. You can get an answer like that versus having to scroll through page after page to be like, where was that one answer? Where was that
yeah.
one thing that, we couldn't even screenshot it back then.
I mean,
Um,
right now an AI would tear a forum up.
oh
It
my
would just eat it up, and you'd just ask any question, and then it would just give you a preordained language model answer of
ha-
just
do you
whatever
think about
it
how
felt.
scary that is though?
It is,
Literally,
but
it could
it's
probably
it's great for what
summarize.
it is. It's
It
not
could
dangerous for what it
summarize
is.
every post in every forum, but it would be like the most confusing information ever because I mean there's quite contrasting opinions in those things.
And it would be interesting to see which one they picked out. I mean, would they
Mhm.
literally just go for the one that had the most like next to his post? Does that qualify as more certified information? It's crazy. I don't know how that would even, what the algorithms for that would be.
Is there a big YouTube presence in the UK when it comes to detailing?
I think the difference that we have right now is that TikTok is our revolution, and
Mm,
because it's not completely, well, we don't know where it's going to be at in the US. It hasn't taken off to the same degree. But here, TikTok leads when it comes to the social marketing aspect of detailing brands.
definitely
It
in
is,
the marketing.
yeah, absolutely.
And
And but it's the marketing and getting it out there, and the education and the showing of products and the 50/50s and the personalities that go with it that really just spark what is effectively the detailing industry, at least over here. And that is it's such a strong contender for the forces that TikTok can apply to any business is just insane over here.
now I know, we've talked a lot in different podcast episodes and with different UK based brands. We always joke about what's with all the foam, but if you were washing a basic, vehicle, not covered in mud, just an average detail. I know we talk about citrus prefoams and then this foam and then this foam. You had said to me something that I was like, okay, that's a little different than what I had thought. Like you don't necessarily need to foam all of them on every detail, but maybe just use that specific foam in that scenario.
Yeah, and I think that it comes down to like your maintenance process. So you have a procedure, and if you have a detailed car that you have a coating on that is going to last for whatever amount of time, and you want to just get it back to looking as clean as it did, then the maintenance washing can be done with just a snow foam and the rinsing and with minimal contact where it's necessary, or you use a different product, like for example, if a bird has deposited its riches on your car, then you have to go in with a slightly different product. I mean, with Dodo Juice we have a product that we call Flies Undone, which basically is there to take away bird droppings and insects, because it breaks down the organic matter that is what actually sticks to the surface. And so that is what's helping that and making that process easier. And that again is kind of our thought process with our products. We want to make them so they're really effective for whatever use they're being used. But the the foam, as you say, it isn't like you use the pH neutral one first or the TFR one first, and then you use the other one, and then you use the contact wash.
I've seen
It's
some that's actually how they present it, though.
and it's more about presenting all of their products rather than
Yeah.
that's their regime, I would say, because
Okay.
I think you can make the decision. A snow foam and taking it off with the pressure washer, and a snow foam with TFR and taking it off with the pressure washer is going to make a very small difference in the amount that the TFR is going to help you to loosen that grimy part. But in essence, doing both of them, if the car is still dirty after one of those two, then it probably needs a contact wash.
Okay.
And so doing both wouldn't be necessary. And then it's that question of, are you just doing a short maintenance wash? Once a week, you snow foam it and you rinse it and you're done. So it's
Eddie,
about that quickness.
Eddie wants to hear your accent real quick. Can you put on the fake accent for him?
Oh, I don't. I really shouldn't that.
No,
Because honestly, it's really bad. It's not a good accent. It sounds really,
it's
really
much
bad.
better than mine.
And it makes me sound fake, real fake.
It's better
So
than mine. For some reason, if I ever try to talk with a British accent, it morphs into like an Australian thing and then Russian, and it's very confusing.
I
But
go back and forth. I mean, even in the words that I say when my main accent is in American, there are words that will come out that just sound completely different. So I can't help it.
for those that are new to the show, like Eddie and other people, we have PJ. He studied in the US, so that's why he doesn't have a very thick British accent, but
There
he
is
is
a
in.
slightly different. There's a slight addendum to that as well, which is that I am actually Norwegian, and
I
in
was gonna
Norway,
say, you said
yeah,
Norway, and
yeah.
you've got like the features,
So,
that's for sure.
so
You
I
look like
am,
a Viking.
I am actually Norwegian, and Norway up until probably the late '80s only bought syndicated television from the United States. So they never bought comedies or anything from the UK. They only bought them. So we had Seinfeld and all of that in Norway, and because we don't dub in Norway at all, we leave it with original audio and subtitle everything. Most Scandinavians will actually speak with an American accent or draw rather than a an English or European accent.
You said one word earlier, brittle. That I was like, that I heard it. Brittle.
Britain, yeah,
We
Britain.
lost the last T. Eddie wants to know, what is Dodo Juice's top 5 products?
I'd probably go for Born to Be Mild, Crudzilla, Red Mist,
New Zealand.
Lime Prime, and Shinecraft. So, we've got a bit of a mix there. That's some shampoo. You've got Lime Prime, which is a finishing compound or finishing solution, which is really, really just amazing because it leaves such a superior finish, in my opinion. And we had in there Red Mist, which I think is old technology, but just has an optical which is not easily obtained by not doing the far more work in an actual wax. So yeah, I think those are probably my favorite.
Okay. All right, we're going to take a quick break to do a commercial. When we
Okay.
come back, we're going to get into the heated debate, maybe not so heated, but I
Hey,
know
yeah,
that there is some old school fans of wax. I know that a lot of people just keep pushing ceramic coatings, and I want to debate the benefits, the disadvantages of waxes versus coatings with someone who actually makes waxes for a living. So we'll be right back after this quick commercial break, and then we'll get right into the debate.
sounds good.
All right.
So the detailing industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and there are so many products to choose from that it can be boggling trying to figure out which ones you want to try out. Some of you guys, you want to stick with the same brand and know what to expect time after time, but there are those of us that part of the joy of detailing is trying out new products. And for those of you that maybe you get stressed out trying to figure out which products to try out, maybe like those type of subscription-based programs where they send you a surprise every month and you don't know what you're gonna get. Well, we've got glove box. They actually sent me this month's glove box for July, so let's go ahead, see what's inside the box. So first up, we've got some detailing brushes from the House of Rags. We've also got their high pH soap, which is actually perfect because I just finished up my bottle on this Explorer. We also have Interior Clean, their sword. It's perfect for carpets, leather, plastics. Based on the dilution, you can pretty much tackle every surface of your interior except for glass. And we've got BDE, or Bugs Dirt Exterior. We also have some talco sprayers to put with our chemicals. And then we also have, this is the jobber. We have a thicker side here and then a low pile side. A nice clean edge there. It's not going to scratch any of your surfaces. And as always, we have our step-by-step guide with a QR code for those of you that want a in-depth look at how to get the most out of these products. Now, it's not always going to be Detail Co. or the House of Rags. Every month, you're going to get new products, new brands, and that's kind of the fun mystery side of it. It's like Christmas every single time. You never know what you're going to get from month to month. But for those of you that maybe like trying out new products, or you want to give a really creative gift to someone you love, we're going to put the link to this product down below, as well as any coupon codes that they provide. But let's go ahead and get back to the show.
So I know that we've hinted at waxes. I'm going to ask a question for those who are watching live, and I want you guys to put it in the comments section down below. But of waxes that you have tried, which ones are your favorite? So we'll get into a little comment section debate on the best waxes. I know you guys make fantastic waxes. What would you say is your most durable wax?
Most durable is definitely Shinecraft. So we do a hybrid wax, which comes in 3 flavors, but it is the same hybrid wax essentially, and that's 4 to 6 months, depending on how much you're driving the car, what it's being exposed to, how much sunlight, how much heat. All these things always play a part. You know, how good the maintenance is, how often the maintenance is, so on and so forth.
I know we chatted a good bit in the, behind the scenes before we went live, and we were kind of talking about some of the benefits and disadvantages of wax. And I feel like the culture in and of itself has shifted away from waxes. They feel more
100%.
old school. When
Yep.
you want a little bit of car therapy, get one with your car, and we even got brands like Swiss Wax, where you're literally hand applying the wax in some areas. But I feel like the
My
science.
favorite way, by the way.
Do you
Personally,
apply your waxes from Dodo
with
Juice
my
by hand?
fingers directly on the paint.
Does that make a difference, or does it just help you to become one with the mold?
No. My answer has always been the same. When we went through and learned as we built and formulated and got better and did more training and did more detailing and were exposed to more and more clever people and learned more and more and more, I was really about the process. And for me, if you're going to wax, you have to clay. And if you're going to clay, then if you have clayed more than 15 cars in your life, that somehow you always miss a bit. Always, 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 always miss a bit. It is, maybe not every single time, but it feels like it's more often than it should be, that you will go over a car and you will simply miss a part. And so for me, the application of a wax with my fingers allowed me to make sure that I had not missed anything in my previous stages. It was about making sure that it was smooth, that the wax was applying the same across the car on all the different panels. It allows you to understand better how far to spread it and how far it will spread. So when you use an applicator, often you lose that touch. And it's a bit like, a steering column that has no real kind of tactile, information to feed back to you as a driver. And it's that same thing. When you use an applicator, you don't know exactly whether or not you're overspreading it or underspreading it. And that is eliminated by doing it by hand. But yeah, it just looks good. I enjoy it. I'm not spiritually awakened or enlightened by it, but it helps me to kind of make sure that I've done the job that I wanted to beforehand. And I think it allows me to do a better job of applying the wax as I'm doing it as well.
I'm curious to know from people who are watching who here has ever applied a wax by hand. I know I never have. I feel like there's a part of me that I've missed out because I haven't, but I don't feel like I've ever had a good enough wax. Like, can you do that with every wax, or are there only certain ones that have more lubrication that it's safe to do that with?
Well, I mean, it's not lubrication; it's solvent,
Okay.
and a little bit down to that heating and cooling process that I mentioned earlier when you asked kind of how handmade waxes are done. And the essence of it is, and that's why we as a company have so many waxes when technically it is actually only 3 different waxes. So we have a soft wax, which comes in one for all colors, one for light, and one for warm, and one for dark colors, which is soft because it allows you to apply it with your fingers directly onto the paint. So we call it a soft texture wax.
Is there
Then we have,
really is there any well, I'm gonna interrupt you. Is there really
yeah,
any
yeah,
benefits with colored polishes, colored waxes,
yeah.
and things like that?
Yeah, it because it has nothing to do with the wax itself in any more effect or chemistry. It has only to do with the physics, which is that when you change the refractive index of the surface that you're looking at, the human eye sees it differently. It's an optical effect caused by physics rather than chemistry.
Does that
And so,
last, or is that a temporary optical effect?
no, well, it lasts as long as the wax is there.
Okay.
So the wax is holding a level or a tint or a dye or a opaqueness in a slight hue. So in the light wax version that we do, we apply no extra filters, which allows high silvers, whites, high yellows to be really, really reflective and very shiny. But you're never going to be able to increase the depth of those colors. The eye will simply not see them as that kind of wet look that you will get on a red or a black. You
Okay.
simply can't get there. So, but then for warm colored cars, there is this, again, the way the eye interprets the surface and the color that you're looking at, you can get that glow from a mid yellow or an orange or the light reds and those colors. And so you get that extra glow and you get a little bit of depth. And that depth is increased by that tincture in the wax. And then in the dark colored wax color charging, you have a darker tint or dye, which effectively it does effectively give you a slight difference. The difference is 5%. So we've actually done very early on, we did it on a white kind of paint surface where we put on different layers of our different waxes. And as you go up to a third layer, you can actually see the difference that's happening. Now, the difference that's happening when you put a dark wax on a white colored car is that it just looks darker because, like I said, you can't increase the depth of it because there's no depth in the color itself. So what you do is when you put that dark wax on a dark colored car, you're giving yourself that 5% extra. And that is simply due to the physics, not down to the chemistry.
Because I feel like, Turtle Wax did this a few years back where they had like the black polish, and no, like, I don't want to say old school products, but when I first started detailing, they were far more prevalent, color specific polishes, color specific waxes. And I just don't see them nowadays. I feel like they've kind of either
But the
shifted
question
away
really,
or shown people that, they don't like a polish is a polish. And at least that's what I kind of have learned.
and I think you're absolutely right there. I think it had to do with the fact that people caught on to this idea that we had color charts and then they wanted to color charge everything else. But then you have to look at what the process is and what the residuals of that process are. So if you're using a polish, which is an abrasive or chemically abrasive product, which you're then going to completely strip off of the surface,
Yeah, it felt
right? Then
counterintuitive.
it can't leave anything behind, which means that it can't have any lasting effect, which means color charging it is not going to help the situation.
It
I
just
mean,
stained my pad.
well, yeah, it stains your pad, but also it's kind of it's more in the mind than it can possibly do. Whereas when you're leaving a product behind, like a wax, then it does have that effect for as long as the wax is on the surface. And so, yeah, color charging a polish or color charging a shampoo, then it's not about color charging. Then it's about making a cool
Marketing.
color for the product. No, but it's, a cool color for the product. 100%. We are all about that. I love color. The prismatic design is kind of the flash in my head of every color. That's what I love. So having colorful products, absolutely, 100%. I love it, and great fragrances. But the color charging where it makes a difference to the effect of you using that product beyond something that doesn't stay on the paint doesn't seem viable.
I agree. And I think that's why those products have not really lasted,
I
over
agree.
time. Now,
I
I
agree.
know that a lot of us don't use waxes. And I know that you guys don't just sell waxes, you have
No.
sealants, you have things like that. You even
Yep.
said you had a ceramic coating in the past.
Yes, we had a ceramic coating in another one of our sister brands. We actually had several. We had glass coatings, we had paint coatings, we had simple paint coatings. We actually had a number of different kind of, and it was actually called Infinity. And that product line has not disappeared, but it's been moved out of that sister brand to be moved into a future brand where we want to hit that entire kind of region of synthetic and ceramic and nano detailing product range, because that is for sure something which has come later. And part of the discussion that we're having now, which is the wax versus coatings, I think, is that it's about what you really want to achieve and how you
Mhm.
want to achieve it. So the idea that the coatings and the synthetics are going to be here forever and that they're not going to disappear, I think for sure. But that there can be a huge resurgence to some of the older technologies, I think can be really valid because they offer things which the newer products just simply don't have in their same kind of wheelbrush.
Well, and we were talking about it a little bit behind the stage, but I honestly feel like there is now more than ever a place for maybe some of those older school or OG products to come back, because I feel like as much as we want ceramic coatings to be the new thing moving forward, there is still a huge gap in education and understanding how to get the most out of them, how to avoid issues with them, that I feel like waxes, they're just simpler. They
Yeah,
are you
and I mean
you really
that's one
can't
of the
screw
biggest
it up
differences.
unless it's like one of those old school waxes where you're letting it dry on there, it gets on the polish and you're like those ones, maybe we can get rid of
Yeah,
those.
yeah,
But the ones that literally you put on, let it haze, buff it off, beautiful shine, easy on, easy off. I
yeah,
feel like there will always be a place for those, and maybe we need to be bringing those back
for sure.
because customers are screwing up coatings so much. They're spending hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on a product that they're maybe getting a year and a half, 2 years out of it, that I'm like, I just feel almost wrong justifying the cost of something like that when they're really not gonna get the most out of it.
No, and also, and I think that's one of the big differences between modern coatings and older wax. It is the fact that an older wax you can apply, you can almost get it wrong and you can easily fix it.
Mhm.
Apply a little bit more wax. The solvents in the wax that you apply are the same solvents that make that wax pliable, and so you can almost fix it on site. You don't need any extra help. When you get to the more advanced coatings, then it's a timing thing. You can't do it in the sunlight. You can't, not that you would wax in the sunlight either, but it's about the more kind of conscripted difficulties and complications that come with applying a coating. And a lot of coatings can be quite simple to apply, but as you say, the difficulty comes if you make a mistake, even if it's simple, which is human, right? Everybody is possible to make a mistake, so it's human to make a mistake, and then it's just much worse to do something about it. And I think that's one of the differences. I think one of the thing that I always bring up when it comes to wax versus ceramics is that what are you trying to achieve?
Mhm.
What is it that you're trying to achieve with the wax or the coating on your car? Do you want something that you put on once and then you can leave for 6 months, a year, a year and a half, 2 years with maintenance. And this is the other thing, just to jump in there. A lot of people don't know that that still means that it has to be maintained.
Yeah.
Like
My
putting on a
customers here
coating.
don't touch it for 6 months, and I'm like,
Yeah, no,
"No."
that's not that. Yeah, that's not how that works.
Yeah.
It still needs maintenance, but so it's you put on something, you want it to last for as long as possible, and you want it to be as protective as possible. Now, the question there becomes, and I often use a reference of the John Wick movies, I'm guessing a lot of you will have seen that. But in one of the later movies, he kind of goes and he gets some body armor, and the sommelier basically says to him, this is going to stop the bullet from penetrating, but you are going to feel that bullet. It's not going to stop the bullet from impacting. It's simply going to make sure that it does not enter your body. And this is, in my mind, a great analogy for the difference between a wax and a coating. So a coating is a super strong, 9H, harder than diamonds,
Oh, some even more than that.
more crystalline than the most advanced adamantium that has ever been found in any kind of a comic book. But at the same time, it's a very thin coating. And so an impact on it, yes, it's going to stop it from getting through that coating, but it's going to pass the impact on to the paint underneath. And one of the things I mentioned to you earlier is this idea that when you put a wax on a car, you're putting a sacrificial layer. And that's what we have to remember. These were all called sacrificial layers, as in you have clear coat on your car. That's what you're trying to protect. Technically, the clear coat is a sacrificial layer for your paint, right? Because before that we had solid paints. So you put the clear coat in the color and you painted that on, 300 microns of solid color, and you could polish that for about 50 years and you'd still have a little bit of paint and clear coat at the bottom, right? But now we put on paint really thin, get that color because it's expensive, and then we put a clear coat on. That's technically the first sacrificial layer that protects the paint of your car.
Mhm.
Then we can either put on something which is a further sacrificial layer, which is either the wax or the ceramic. Now, the ceramic, like I said, is just going to stop stuff from penetrating, but it's going to pass on the impact. A wax sits thicker on the car, and it acts more like an impact dampener on things that hit your paint. Now, does that affect the wax finish? Yes, it does, but it's so much easier to remove as well. So the thing is that what you're doing is you're not passing on as much of the impacts. Now, you can easily say, you can get a stone chip through wax just as much you can get a stone chip through ceramics. Neither of them are 100% again, going to protect you. If the right stones at the right angle, at the right speed hit your paint, it's going to cause some damage. There's nothing we can do short of having a force field.
Yeah.
So but the reality is that there's more impact dampening with a wax. Then that causes the difference between having that sacrificial layer, which is easy to remove but takes a little bit longer to apply, and you have to apply it more frequently, or you put on a ceramic which you can put on, maintain much easier, okay, but is passing on some of that impact. And again, it's about what is your paint. Do you have soft paint? You have Japanese soft paint, you have French soft paint, you have Italian soft paint. When you put a ceramic on top of it, it is passing on more of that impact into the actual paint. When you have a harder paint, it's less abusive either way because it's a harder paint. So, it's not as important from that aspect, but there is a big difference between how they protect.
Steve asked a good question. What are your thoughts on applying waxes over a ceramic coating?
I mean, it's not a problem. The thing is that because of the fact that ceramic coating is so thin and it lies on top, many ceramic manufacturers will tell you that these coatings will increase the glossiness and the depth and all of these things, and they will definitely have an effect. There's no taking that away. But I have yet to, in all of my years in this industry, I have yet to see a ceramic coating that can give me the depth of putting a actual wax onto a dark colored car. There is nothing that gives you the depth and the wetness of that. And so, putting a wax on top of ceramic coating, which is so thin, it's fine. But it's like saying, I'm going to take some margarine on my bread and then I'm just going to cover that with some butter. It's like you are literally double buttering, but it's not going to
One
hurt.
tastes better, that's for sure.
Okay, yeah, no, I get it. But the thing is that it's
I mean, I
not.
could take that
Yeah,
analogy.
it's not going to make it look worse. And applying the wax is going to give that refractive index change, which is going to allow you to see a difference in how that looks. But a lot of that comes down to subjective too. I mean, it's incredible what people want from the look of their car.
Now, most manufacturers would tell you that ceramic coatings will not allow a wax to actually bond or benefit because the coating will repel it. Do you think there is truth to that? Do you think that's
No,
just a marketing misnomer because they don't want you to
no,
mess with their coating?
no. I think it's 100% true, and the reason why I know that that's probably 100% true is because of the fact that when you do put on a ceramic, it does flatten out the surface because
It's
each
filling in
particle
those
in a
pores.
ceramic ingredient is a smaller particulate size than that in a wax. So, although wax is going to fill higher, so it literally goes, it will fill into the spaces, but also sit higher and thicker on the surface. It can afford itself to not be completely flat. Whereas when you're putting on a ceramic, it's going to level out like a very, very diluted cement, like the finishing cement that you put on top, which is high water content so that it evens out flatly by itself. And that is the effect that the ceramic has. And because it's filling in more of those clear coat pores, it's not allowing the wax to hold on to the same degree as it would on a clear coat. Absolutely. Does it mean that it won't last at all or it won't adhere at all? No, it will adhere, just not as well. And that is what they're effectively saying.
Well, and Eddie had a good point. Some waxes do have abrasives within them, so you wouldn't necessarily want those, like cleaner waxes, things like that.
But
We,
yeah, and that's the thing. I've yet also to see a paste wax which has an abrasive in it. But the cleaner waxes, those are a jack of all trades, right? So it's
mhm.
trying to abrade the surface and do some light marring removal and do some filling and then leave some protection behind. So you're taking two steps really and you're putting it into one product, and in my mind is never going to give you the same results as splitting those up and doing them individually.
And I feel like you've touched on this a little bit, but AMI details says, will a wax still have a filling aspect when applied over ceramic coating, or does it lose that?
No, wait. So in my mind, the way that works is if you can see the unfilled marring, swirls, whatever you want to call it, effect, defect in the paint, once the ceramic is on there, that will probably not be corrected by putting a wax on top. That would potentially be protected or filled better if the wax was put on first, because the difference there is that the ceramic coating, if there is something that you can see, okay, that means that there is enough of a swirl or a scratch or whatever in the surface that you can see light reflecting off of it differently. That's why you can see scratches. It's the light, which is why we all use the
Mhm.
lamps to look for swirls and so on and so forth. But so if you can see it and the ceramic coating hasn't filled it, it means that it's basically coated the sides rather than filling the trough. So when you put a wax on top, it's not going to have the same look as if the wax had gone on first, because the wax would be a single refractive index from the bottom of the trough to the top, whereas there'll be a ceramic coat that will go down, which will still allow some reflection of light inside through the wax.
So,
But because it doesn't become a solid unit, it doesn't I don't you're not going to get all of the benefits of using a wax for filling purposes if you put it over a ceramic.
but that goes against everything that every coating manufacturer has told us. You're saying, have you ever tried that where you do wax and then a coating?
Yeah, yeah. No, no, no. You can't put a coating on top of a
Yeah,
wax.
because you were saying if you had the wax first
No,
and then the coating. I
sorry.
just
What I
wanted to
meant to
clarify.
say, sorry. What I meant was that if you want to fill that, you have to put on a wax first, not put on a coating. I shouldn't have said first. That was
Okay.
my that
'Cause
was
no, I was
that was
just
the
like,
implic
have
that
you
was the
actually tried
implication
that? I
that was
wanna
the
see that.
implication that I gave incorrectly. What I meant is that if you're going to try to hide deeper swirls or scratches, then that is more effectively done with a wax application and then not a ceramic on top. Although you can apply a nano ceramic.
Do
So
you
like a water-based nano ceramic, for example, like our Future Armor, which is basically just a water-based sealant which you spray on. You can spray easily on top of a wax.
So do you feel like if let's say I know we were talking a little bit about like color specific waxes. Do you feel like coatings offer the same advantages that a color specific wax can with based on the coating that you choose? Because yeah, I feel like there are some coatings that give you more of a candy shell look. There are some that give you, I mean, they're all glossy, period. And a lot of it
For sure.
comes from your prep and stuff. But do you feel like for those that are looking for, we've said depth, and I think for me that's more of that warmer, richer look, that you would want
It's,
maybe
it's
on.
where the paint looks like it's still in liquid form,
Yeah.
right? So it still looks like, the mirror from the Matrix. If you touched it, just gently, then it would just warble out as a single wave across the surface. And that depth comes from you must have a dark color, right? It must be a dark color in order for the waves that come to your eye to give you that optical effect. But putting on a ceramic, if one ceramic looks more glossy than another, then more often than not, if they're offering that extra somewhat depth or wetness, which I think comes more from a wax than from any ceramic, then it is doing so by the thickness that it is laying itself onto the surface.
Mm.
Because the 95% of the look of any vehicle is there before you put any products on top of it, right? The better the car paint and clear coat is before you put anything on it, that's what sets the bar for how good it's going to be. And you can do some helping, you can do some filling, you can do some enhancement, you can do that 5% color charged kind of, increase in the depth and the wetness and stuff like that. But, it's all about what was there and what you're protecting and how good that was. That's what really makes, I think, it does make the biggest difference.
John Weber asked, when you have a metal flake in a paint system, is there a different wax versus solid color?
No, and the other thing is that you get more of that, and you called it the candy effect, right? Which is basically that you have multiple or extraneous layers of clear coat in order to get that candying effect when you do the paint job. And the same thing happens with wax. So a wax, because of the nature of it being thicker, changing that refractive index, it actually looks like the flake sits in a different space to the paint.
Okay.
And that's what gives flake, I think, a much better pop in a wax than I have seen in a ceramic.
I think I need to revisit some good old wax therapy. It's been a minute since I've done a good wax video. I feel like someone said the other day, I did a podcast episode with two friends of mine, and I didn't like the title, but he called me the coding queen. And I was like, I'm not. But I was like, literally looking through all of the videos that I do, and like half of them are ceramic coatings. And I'm like, maybe I should revisit some of the, I don't want to say old school, but some of the waxes. If you guys wanted to see a demonstration of a good old wax, drop your suggestions in the comment section down below, because I think we need to go a little old school recently. But
But I think it's a lot about what you want and what you want to get out of your car, which is what I mentioned to you earlier as well.
yeah.
If you want to spend a minute with your car, it doesn't have to be an entire day. In the forum days, we were talking about 3-day details. One day of prep, one day of correction, and one day of protection, and that was kind of like the lowest, most minimum that we could call an actual detail. But
Mhm.
a lot of things have moved on since then. A lot of technologies have gotten better. But if you're putting on a coating that lasts 2 years and you want to go out there and test something new or have some fun or do some correction or something, you can't. But if you have a wax, it's easy to strip, and then you can do whatever that you want to do with the paint and put another wax on top. So it's about that, how much time do you want to spend on it? And that's the pro also for a coating, because if you want to put something on and maintain it by just doing kind of like bi-monthly washes and have a ceramic on there, it's going to stay protected and cleaner over time with a lot less work from your part. And so it's about what you really want from it.
Someone's joking. They said, I put 39 waxes on my car because I currently have 35 ceramic coatings on my car. That would be
Okay.
that would be interesting. What would you say is some of the limitations with waxes? Like, what are the limits that it
It's
would have?
durability. It's
What's that?
durability. It's
Yeah.
durability. I mean, the cons for a wax are the fact that a wax simply won't last as long as a ceramic coating. It just, no matter how you formulate it, we've in the industry, I saw somebody was mentioning graphene. We've thrown all kinds of things at paste waxes to try to make them last longer. But in essence, they are what they are in nature. And
Hmm.
the when a key ingredient in a paste wax is carnauba, the carnauba palm tree, it excretes the carnauba wax onto its leaves. Now, if they could naturally layer beyond 2 or 3 physical layers of wax, then they would become opaque over time, which would kill the plant because it would no longer be able to do photosynthesis.
Hmm.
So by nature, carnauba has a layering max. It's built in, literally by evolution.
Hmm.
And the thing is that, and even if you were able to apply it, carnauba at 100% is completely opaque, which means it wouldn't matter what your car color was, because you would just see the yellow carnauba lying on top of it.
Yeah.
So
So you shouldn't layer waxes, is what you're saying?
well, there's a natural layering limit, right?
Yeah.
The thing is that when you're and I talked a little bit about this when we were talking about how easily it is to correct a wax mistake rather than a ceramic mistake, which
Yeah.
is that when you use a wax and you apply it to a surface, the wax that's still in the jar has a solvent that makes that particular wax malleable. Right? That's its purpose. It's literally developed so that that particular solution is keeping that wax possible to keep spreading. And
Hmm.
so, by very nature of it, if you make a mistake with wax and you apply more of the same wax in the same place, you will technically be re-putting that solvent into the wax that's already on the car, making it malleable, and so thereby fixing the problem. And so, that kind of that is the sacrificial part of it, but it's also the ease of it.
So it
But it takes
sounds,
longer as well. It
yeah.
does take longer to put on a wax. It's not, no, maybe not in
It's
some
shorter than a
ceramic
coating,
coatings.
that's for sure.
Yeah, but
I
I
would
mean,
say,
and there are many coating systems. So there are coating systems where you require, 2-step. There are some that are 1-step. There are, but in essence, the timing and how often you want to do it can have some aspect on which one you choose.
if I had someone reaching out to me and saying, which should I use, a wax or a ceramic coating, I'm going to ask them, how do you maintain the vehicle? Where is it stored? How hard is it driven? Do you take it through the automatic car wash? Because if you do, a wax probably isn't going to last very long. Ceramic
No,
coating is going to be way more chemically resistant.
absolutely, 100%.
How much time are you willing to devote to continued maintenance?
Yes.
But for me, like, I do feel like wax is for those that, like you said, maybe have a classic car, maybe are looking for some filling capabilities, but they are not uh, that, not going to maintain their vehicle. Every 3, 4 months they can go out, spend. And I mean, we know we have spray waxes, we have spray sealants, we have all of those things. And I feel like we're lumping all of those. We're not just talking, just hand waxes, even though, that is probably the most common interpretation of
Yeah.
what people have. But within waxes, it can be spray waxes, spray sealants, like up to kind of your ceramic sealants and beyond. But because even some
And of
ceramic
course,
sealants have wax in them.
within waxes, of course, you have substantially natural and hybrids
Hmm.
and full synthetics. I mean, there are available fully synthetic waxes that don't actually contain any natural waxes at all. And they will have a higher durability,
Hmm.
and still apply and work like a wax as a sacrificial layer. So,
Yeah.
but they have less of that natural ingredient in them.
But I think it's interesting to kind of reconsider the idea of the color specific waxes, the benefits that those can have for certain vehicles in certain scenarios. And I honestly had never heard that before about how and maybe I have, and it's just been a hot minute since I've really thought about the science of waxes, of how ceramic coatings bond with your clear coat, and that if anything impacts it, the impact is gonna be absorbed into the clear coat, whereas with a wax, it's sitting on top of it, and it can kinda take a little bit of the
Damping.
brunt. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then you can reapply that. So I think there's huge advantages kind of with both based on the
I mean,
scenario.
there are,
Yeah.
but as you said, if you have a car and you do, 200, 500, 1,000 miles, 2,000 miles a week, and all on the highway or the interstate, and you want to take it through a car wash because when you show up at the client or the meeting or whatever, the car has to be clean then and there. So you hit a car wash on your way right to that meeting. Ceramic is the way to go, absolutely the way to go. There's no question, because there's no wax that's going to take that beating every time you want to get that done, whereas a ceramic will.
Yeah. Well, I think it's an interesting conversation that, maybe we should revisit within this industry, bringing in um, waxes and things like that. Not always just going straight to ceramic coatings. Because for me, my biggest issue with coatings is the water spotting issues. I notice with waxes, there's not as much of that issue. I feel like water spotting issues wasn't even something that we discussed like in the 90s 2000s. It's only since ceramics and the extreme hydrophobicity of products, tight little water beads, that we've really had this issue and needed to create dedicated water spot removers and things like that.
And I think, there, unfortunately, I think that the old argument of the world climate has to play some part in this, because the rain that we have in the world has changed also, and we
Mm,
see that a lot in the UK because we have very, very hard water, which means that it contains a lot of limescale, and so even rain that falls on your car, if left, will leave a water spot, and that is simply because it's just so much harder, the water. And in some places you have more of an acidic rain, and that will not leave so much of a spot, but it can have more of an effect on whatever coating you have. An acid, all ceramic coatings are held in an acidic solvent. That's how they're held in constitution for being used. And so applying an acid to the surface might not take it away, but it kind of re puts it into solution to some degree, at least the outer edge of it, even after it's been on the surface. And so with a wax, though, the anything an acid would just eat through it, but it wouldn't show that much of a water spot on it. But hard water leaves water spots. So I think a lot of it comes down, or some of it comes down to just the climate problems. But I think also it comes down to more and more people wanting a hydrophobic coating on their car. Because when you are being hydrophobic, the surface is pushing the water away with equal ability on all the surface. And that means you get these very tight, round balls of water. Okay. And they're not running off. They are literally being held because you have such a hydrophobic surface. And when you want the beading, which everybody wants a picture of, and that's what tells you that I have cleaned my car. When I have beading that looks better than warp speed in the space shuttle, then that is when I know that I've accomplished my job. The problem with that is that it's maintaining that water in one place. And so when that water evaporates, whatever minerals are held in that water are being put directly onto the surface. And so the increase in the hydrophobicity increases the amount of water spots that we're getting.
is there
You see
such
what
a
I mean?
thing? Yeah. Is there such a thing as a wax that sheets?
No. Well,
Can you make it?
so a
Go pour it in your
hydrophilic
kitchen sink.
hydrophilic properties are really complicated, because of the fact that no surface on a car has the same angle or gradient. So the thing is that you will have differences. On any surface which is completely flat and which is wider than the area of dispersal due to impact of any liquid on top is going to maintain that stuff on top because it is completely flat. So any areas that are completely flat, even with the most hydrophilic residue that has ever been invented, there's still going to be some residuals that will be there because of the surface, and there's no angle, there's no run, there's nowhere for it to really go. But interestingly enough, we tried for about 5 years to develop what we would want to call like the best wax in the world, like hands down. Just we wanted it to be hydrophobic, we wanted it to be hydrophilic, we wanted it to fill, we wanted it to last forever, we wanted everything. And once we started really playing with the formulation, we realized that once you push in one direction, you are coming away from one of the other attributes. So obviously the more hydrophobic you get, the less hydrophilic you are. And the thinner you are, the less filling it does, but it also gives less of the kind of refractive index attributes. And so you always have to choose. It's like one of those graphs where you have to choose 4 points, and that's kind of that's kind of the area that you have to live within the choices that you make of each of those attributes. So is it possible to make a completely hydrophilic wax? We haven't been able to do it yet properly because the natural attributes of the natural ingredients, the beeswax, the carnauba wax, the candelilla wax, they are all hydrophobic.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you look at the lotus effect on leaves. It's it's exactly how God made them to be. You're kind of changing them completely. You might as well not have them.
And you're working against their natural state. And so so we have not been able to make like a 100% hydrophilic wax. But it could probably be done if it was done in a completely synthetic fashion. But
it's like saying you want peanut butter that doesn't taste like peanuts. Yeah.
Or that was not made of peanuts.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? You want the flavor purple. That's the equivalent.
I think it's an interesting conversation, and I appreciate the input and the education. I'm not strong on my wax knowledge, so I definitely learned quite a bit in this conversation. I want to shift gears a little bit. I know a lot of people have been asking questions. I have some specific questions that I always seem to ask guests when I have them on the show. But one of those questions would be, if you only have 6 products from Dodo Juice to clean a car with, what would they be?
I would definitely say, so it's gonna hit a lot of the marks with the top 5, I think. But if I had 6 products, I would definitely go for Crudzilla because we're big on pre-wash. I'd definitely go for Born to Be Mild, our shampoo. I would, with only 6 products, you're not gonna get every stage in there. So I'm gonna have to skip claying and probably go.
You don't need to clay every time. Who needs that?
No, exactly. So we skip claying. We head straight to lime prime because it just gives a great finish, regardless of what kind of coating you're going to put on top. And then clearly menthol, our glass cleaner, is absolutely to die for. Our most stolen household product, in fact. Most of them do not live long in the garage because they're taken into the house because they clean so much better than the glass cleaners you will get in a normal supermarket. And then dark matter actually is probably one that I would go for because I really like the not matte but new, kind of brand new look of tires when they're black but they're not so glossy and they're not just going to spew lots of silicone out the back. And I think I probably would go for red mist or a wax. Red mist or a wax. It's difficult. It's a lot about the car. It's about what I'm going to be using it for, how often I want to do it, how easily I want to get it done. Okay. So I think those would be the products I would use.
What are some common mistakes you see other detailers making with your products?
I think the biggest mistake that anybody from an enthusiast to a hobby detailer to a professional detailer makes is, and I make the mistake too, assuming you know how this product is supposed to be used and not looking at any of the directions on the product. I think that is the biggest
Lead.
mistake by far, because the thing is that I've made the mistake. I've assumed. I've picked up a bottle. I've looked at it. I've made some assumptions in my mind about what that product should be doing and how it should be working, and I have just gone for it, and then it has punished me in some way afterwards. And then I turn that bottle around, looking for the customer email to say, "Oh my God," and then I'm reading it, and I can see it says very clearly that cannot be used in this and this in such and such a condition, which I've just done. And then I'm like, nah, okay, I can only really blame myself on this one.
Yeah.
I am gonna call myself and have my people get in touch with my own people. So it's there. I think that is probably the most common mistake, because a lot of those assumptions come from a product name, or the recognition of a certain ingredient in a product, and then you just think it's going to work the same as every product that has that ingredient in it from before. And because different people formulate stuff differently, I think that is the most common mistake.
Okay. What improvements or changes would you like to see in the detailing industry?
Well, I'd love, personally, I'm biased, but I'd love a resurgence of waxes. I think that'd be great. I think a lot of people would get a lot out of it too. I
Hmm.
think there's part, and that's kind of what we were talking about, before the show as well, was this, there's a part of detailing that feels a little lost because there aren't that many people who wax anymore.
Hmm.
And you talked about, do you become one with the car? Do you get some kind of a spiritual connection? I think some people will, and I think it's not really about the wax, but it's about the fact that the wax affords you the time that you are spending, I guess, if I can say it that way, so intimately with your car, right?
Well,
And so
almost
you
with
can,
yourself, you know?
and yourself, yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. And so there's a lot of that I think can be helpful, but also just understanding, and you touched on it earlier, it's about that education. What kind of benefits are you looking for? Does it really help you to have a coating on the car that lasts 2 years if you don't really maintain it, and it just gets worse and worse, and then you expect it to be perfect but it isn't, and then or would you actually enjoy once a month going out and re-waxing your car? It doesn't matter if a wax lasts 3 months if you're out there every month re-waxing it, because then the durability becomes a completely non-important variable
Yeah.
of the process.
And
And
I know
that
we
that
we touched
go
on
ahead.
this a little bit, with the international detailing, because I feel like that is more of the emphasis. It is more frequent maintenance. When we've talked about brands like Katiba or Maldeep or things like that, there does seem to be way more of an enthusiast culture internationally than here in the US, where people make the time to wash and protect, maybe not just wash. I feel like here in the US, we wash, but we don't really
Yeah,
protect. You see
yeah.
foggy headlights all over the place because people don't even put wax down. And I'm like, you missed a spot, and I know where it was. Um, and I don't know how to create that shift. I don't know if it's just because we're so busy and we're, caught up with watching other people's lives that we don't take the time to actually just go out and do the things that we need to
and
do.
and I
Are
think
things
also,
slower in the rest of the world that they just enjoy that?
I don't know. I think it's about what you have been able to see and witness and understand from the cars that you see. A clean car is a clean car, a detailed car is a detailed car, and a perfectly detailed and protected with benefits is that. And so
Mhm.
it's kind of, if the mass amount of cars that you see are just washed, but there isn't really much more than that done to them, then you're setting the bar at that level. And I'm not saying that's bad, but that means that that's setting the mean average. So to be above that, you don't need to do that much. And I guess the difference is that here, people have already kind of competed against each other to such a degree that the enthusiasts wish to maintain a a even more attention to detail process is has come from that, you know, that it's just stepped up, you know, in the mean average has stepped up.
Mhm. How do we get that here is what I wanna know.
You know, it's difficult to, I mean, the right influencers and it'll happen, you know.
We're
I think
trying. I feel like all
y-
of us here in the US, we're trying so hard to bring up the education and make it
I
more
think also
engaging.
though, you know, I do see it a lot here too, but that there are equally as many people who are enthusiastic about maintaining and keeping their cars, but are not that interested in spending an entire weekend at a car show,
Yeah.
right?
I
So
don't
the
like car
point is
shows that
that,
much. I go and I
right, and
judge.
exactly. So, and the thing is that if you don't take your car to a car show, then even though the mean average is higher, it's only the mean average of the ones that you're getting to see on display in mass. You know, it doesn't happen so much when you're driving down the neighborhood,
Mhm.
you know, looking at every car as you drive by, because that would be dangerous.
I think
Recommend not.
that's the frustrating part for me as a detailer is that, and I mean, I can still see the beauty, but I do go to these car shows and I see the flaws. I see the things that they missed, and I want to just be able to enjoy, and I do, but I have to, like, fight through that tendency to be like, "Look at the armor all on that seat. They're gonna slide all over the place like a greased
Oh,
rag," you know?
I can't be at a stoplight without looking at all the cars surrounding me. I will literally judge every car around me at all times. I walk down the street, I'm seeing holograms, I'm seeing
Yeah.
swirls, I'm
I
seeing,
see dead
you know,
people.
unclean glass, I'm seeing trim
Yeah.
that's hanging, I'm seeing, you know, brake dust that just isn't being removed by the normal process of using a shampoo because they're not using a brake dust remover. You
Mhm.
know, I cannot in any way, shape, or form walk past a vehicle without taking these things in. But it hasn't destroyed my love of vehicles. It just
No.
means that that's how I look at things, and I can't not look at things that way.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I wish I was more mechanically inclined because then maybe I could go and when they've got the hoods open and I see all the engines, be like, wow, I know what the heck any of that means. Now I'm like, that's really clean, but I have no idea what any of it does.
And
But
but that's what's so great too, because it allows you to have interest in more than just the cleaning bit. You know, it can be in the paint, it can be in the type of decorations or vinyls or modifications or the engine rebuilds or, you know, covering everything in chrome and carbon. You know, these are all aspects of car culture. They're
mhm,
all equally as important. What detailing does, though, is it presents all of these things in their best light. And I think that's the thing that detailing has for it. You know, that's because it doesn't matter what you do. If you modify your car, you make the engine bigger, you change it out, you know, you add vinyl, you don't, you wrap it, you whatever it is you do, still detailing is going to help you to present whatever it is you've done the best that it can be. And so it helps every aspect of kind of car culture.
so we have a few more questions that guests have asked. And if you guys
Let's
have other
do
questions for PJ, make sure you drop them down below really quick because we are wrapping this one up. But Chris M wants to know, can you provide some tips, tricks, and watch outs for applying some of your waxes? Like what applicator, how long to set up?
All right. So generally, the advice is all the same.
Mhm.
You cannot. It is literally impossible for a human being to apply a paste wax so thin that there is not an excess that you have to buff off. That's the first rule of paste wax club. So that means that, you know, you can put it on too thickly, but you will see that and you will notice that if in the
Mhm.
process. And it will just make it more difficult to remove that excess because you're leaving more excess on the surface. And you know, coming very quickly back to why I prefer applying by hand is because I know you have a better idea of exactly how much wax you're leaving on the surface when you have your finger directly on there. Now, the question of what applicator to use. So, for example, we have an innovation that we created, which is a finger applicator. So it's an applicator which sits over your three fingers. It's called a finger mitt, and it's a foam applicator, and what it does, there it is, and so that sits over three fingers and it's tapered at the end, and what that does is that it doesn't come off. It sits on your finger and it will not drop off, even if you're not holding it. And so with a normal foam applicator, and I don't know if anybody else has done a lot of wax application, but you can get the claw, is what I call it, where all of your fingers lock up because you've been
Yes.
holding that foam applicator for so long with so much pressure in one position that
Hmm.
you get that kind of almost T-Rex claw hand. And the difference here is that you're not holding on to anything. The foam is holding on to your fingers. It's tapered at the end, so it will fit nicely and snugly into almost any size kind of wax jar, and it applies that over the surface. And then you use it just like you would use a foam applicator, but also it doesn't fall off. And so, because the second rule of wax application is if the applicator touches the ground, it never touches the paint again. So, I think those are the things. How long to leave it for is dependent upon the wax, mostly down to the ingredients. So, are they substantially natural? Is it a hybridization or is it a fully synthetic wax? All of them will have different kind of application or hazing times, I should say. And obviously, ambient temperature, humidity. My gosh, all of these things play a huge role too.
And just read the directions.
And read the directions. Look, I think yes.
All right. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions from all of our viewers, but PJ, thank you so much for coming on, for sharing a little bit with us about Dodo Juice and the knowledge that you have with some of the products and the benefits of waxes and things like that. If people want to purchase your products or find out more about Dodo Juice, where do they go?
Right. So we do have dodojuice.com, which is our website, and we will ship to the United States. Now, obviously, things are a little bit
Tariffs, yeah.
complicated
Hmm.
with getting stuff into the US. Now, the UK does have a deal already. So we were the first nation actually to have a deal with your president. And so things are actually not as bad. But
Okay.
the shipping costs themselves are, unreasonable. I have to admit, they're unreasonable. And we simply pass on what it costs us to ship it. Now, we have a great opportunity right now because we are looking to expand our reseller market in the States to get more places in the States able to supply people in the United States, because we do get emails, I don't know, 2 or 3 a week, where people have been buying from resellers who are no longer around, or you have changed their kind of pivoted the way that they do their business to a more national kind of product range. And, in those situations, they can buy from us, but push your favorite reseller, push your favorite distributor for who buys, where you buy your detailing stuff, and tell them that you'd like to, be involved in some Dodo Juice stuff. And we're happy to take an email, and we're definitely have an opportunity now for increasing our kind of reselling spread in the United States. We'd love to bring more products out there.
Are you guys sold through Carzilla?
Not currently.
Okay. Okay. So hopefully things change where people can try you guys' products out here very soon. But what is next for Dodo Juice? Do you guys have any new products or teasers that you can give us?
At the moment, I have to admit, I'm actually onboarding an entirely new inventory system for the entire company. And so that is put halt on the more fun kind of reformulations, new products, and stuff like that. I think the range is very well mixed, and it is the full range, which will take care of all of the steps that I think are necessary for detailing a car properly, beyond which you can go to kind of wet sanding or heavy compound cutting and stuff like that, which then you would potentially need to look outside of the Dodo Juice range. But within the detailing protocol and regime that we recommend, we've got everything there that is needed. There's products in there that not everybody has heard of, so there's a lot of good surprises in there. But at the moment, yeah, we're gonna sort out this new onboarding system, and then we're gonna get back our kind of R&D hats on,
Awesome.
and we're gonna take it from there.
So stay tuned is what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah, I know there's always our Christmas gifts, which are pretty cool.
Paul wants to know, how can we get in touch with PJ if he has
It's very
questions?
difficult. It's very, very difficult. PJ@dodojuice.com is my email. That is the way. It is the easiest way to get in touch. And then from there, I'm big on WhatsApp. So
Okay.
once people get in touch, then let me know if you're on WhatsApp, and we can hook up that way.
Okay. Well, awesome. Thank you so much, PJ, for taking the time
It's been a
to
pleasure.
hang out
Thanks
with
for
us
having me on.
tonight. And hopefully, you guys have enjoyed this episode. Next week, I'm really excited. We're going to have Josh on from Quiver, and he's going to be answering any questions you guys have about his products. We're also going to be talking about some of the new products that he's going to be releasing soon. So make sure you guys tune in next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time over at the House of Rags. And if you haven't already, make sure you give
Or
us a
1
thumbs up
a.m.
and
English time.
subscribe. Well, I thank you so much for staying up late with me. You don't look like you're that tired. You must be a night owl.
I
But
I am, but I'm definitely gonna get myself home now.
all right. Well, safe travels and everyone stay dry, stay safe, and we'll see you next week on our episode, okay?
Thank you for having me. Bye.
See you guys.
Oh.